Sure. So, I mean, if he comes on board, he comes on board.
Yeah, exactly. Yudhishthira will probably try after his evening prayer. He's telling me from Indonesia. Otherwise, we just proceed in any case. So,
oh, okay.
We have the minimum requisite of 3 for a Jamaat. So,
it's okay. And it'll be recorded anyways, so they can...
Exactly. We have everything we need. We even have the recording at hand. So perfect. So, gentlemen, it's nice to have everybody on board. And welcome back, Logan. Great to have you, even though you're in the middle of your man cave studying away. Although your beard is the same, I think whether you're relaxing or in your cave, you're like my beard too. So
yeah, I was wondering my hair disappeared too.
Yeah. Good. So I hope you're doing well, Logan, and Mohammed. Nice to have you on board, and nice that you're with us also. Great. So yeah, what's the agenda really for today is to see if we can get some feedback on our last exercise, in case you were able to look at that in the last month. You know, Islam being reason, and we kind of broke that down quite a bit, I thought, on different levels, on the level of the Quran, on the level of you know, historical background of the development of Islamic philosophy, on the background of the Zaydi madhab. So we broke that down on a lot of different levels, and I'm kind of interested just to hear, you know, whether you were able to come up with a team exercise, and if so, what kind of were the learnings out of that from your side. And then I think after that we can jump into today's lesson, which is Islam is freedom, is the name of the principle, which and as you guys know, I mean, these principles are basically, you know, these are basically, it's not like he came with a list and said, these are the principles of Islam. It's more like through all his teachings and everything that he's done, and everything that, you know, we talked about during the teachings that he taught me, really, these kind of points kind of crystallized, if you will. And I happen to be the one kind of wrapping them into principle, just for the sake of formatting it and making it really easily presentable. And my goal, you know, of course, because we're living in the modern age, is of course not to go deep and study lots and do lots of research and all that stuff like you guys are doing, but to be able to put it on an Instagram post and put it on Instagram so everyone in the world can understand it.
Snippet.
There's good and bad to it.
Yes, it's both. It's bad. It's good and bad. Yeah, it's just a joke. It's a joke, of course, but it's to put the humor aside, I always have the feeling, like Einstein said it very well, you know, if you really understand something, you should be able to explain it to a 5-year-old. Yeah.
Yes. Agreed.
So we want to be able to crystallize the things in such a way that they can be very easily explained. But at the same time, of course, they should have a certain depth and a certain breadth.
It shouldn't be too simplified either.
Exactly. There must be a basis and a depth and a foundation on which to build the sky rise. So of course we must find the balance, but then this crystallizing into principles helps us to explain to everyone, really. So that's the point of this, yeah. And again, so this should take up most of the time for today, and yeah, maybe we can get started with you guys. So did you have a chance to look at Islam being reason? Is it still reason, or is it now something else?
Yes, I was referring to our supposed discussion board. Didn't seem that we get to discuss on it.
Yeah, it was a bit slow this month. That's true.
Yeah, it's a bit slow. But anyway, I think we can just continue it here.
Sure.
Right?
Yes.
So yeah, Islam is reason. Basically, I mean, it is related to what we've discussed previously. I mean, reason being intellect. I mean, from the angle of akal or intellect, the Quran actually commands us to utilize our intellect every now and then. And I mean, my personal, what I feel resonates well with me was the story of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. When he was in search of God, he was questioning whether the sun, the moon is God. That itself is the beginning of philosophy, in inverted commas. And precisely why you can't exactly separate philosophy from faith or religion, for that matter. And yeah, with akal akal itself is given by God. So if you are told not to utilize it, then how do you find God? And I think I did share the video by Einstein, the snippets from his movie. But about him questioning the relativity of time, and then what is time, what is space.
Right.
Probably this is a joke that the one God is trying to play with us.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, even for an intellectual like Einstein, he himself is utilizing intellect to the point of realization that there is a certain limit whereby you just not meant to find the answer, at least not now.
Absolutely.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yes.
So that would be my take on the reason itself and its relation to Islam.
Wonderful. Absolutely. Go ahead, Logan.
I didn't do the as a homework assignment ahead of time, but I would like to. I guess I would just add something.
Just jump in.
Yeah. And I like that Muhammad drew the brought up the story of Ibrahim. I think that's I always use that example with my students as the as an example of, yes, we need to use reason and things like that. But I would also add to that it's inherent in our nature, right? Because
yes,
for Adam, when Adam was created, right, he was alayhi salam, he was given the names, right? That he was taught the names of all things, which is essentially the gift of language, right? We're given language, and if we look at the world, we're the only creatures that really have language to the extent that we do, right? And you can't really have reason without language. So I mean, it's the basis. Like language is the basis of reason, and so
yeah, but that's a good point.
Point. And so we're kind of the rational animal, right? We're the reasonable animal here, basically out of all of God's creation, using language to name things and the essence of things, but also beyond just the physical, naming things that are conceptual and metaphysical as well. So yeah.
Wonderful. I love what you just said, both of you actually. I thought you had some really good points. I like the point that Brother Muhammad brought about what is time and what is space, and that clearly at some point even the human being is limited, because we are limited. So therefore, obviously, the aql is also limited, just like all of our other characteristics are limited. Our strength is limited, our wisdom is limited, our love is limited. Everything as human being has certain parameter of limits. Only God is unlimited. So therefore, very, very difficult, if not impossible, for a human being to attain such limitless without reaching, obviously, this higher state of union with God, which also, as you properly said, cannot be understood only intellectually, let's put it that way, or you have to somehow put the limits of intellect behind you in order to move to the next stage of consciousness, before we can realize a stage like this. And I also like to pick up on what Logan said, which was, because it's a nice bridge to our topic today, which is Islam is freedom. You were mentioning how humans have the most, as a species we have the most, and you're right now into that whole biology thing. So I think I'll just jump on that, and pick up on this, if I may.
No, please, please.
If I may poke fun at you a little bit.
It's fine,
okay. you can poke back. It's welcome. So
it helps me. It helps me to justify taking a time away from my studies.
That's good. That's good. Excellent. Yeah. So let's hope it works out, because I think this subject is really interesting, also from a biological point of view. So if we look at the natural world, okay, actually you can put in an argument that all creatures are communicating. Every living creature is communicating on some level. Okay, whether it's the ants that are building a colony, and they do it quite spectacularly and quite orderly, by the way, much more orderly than we humans do it. If you look at the way that it's actually been discovered that trees now, if you put a certain amount of trees with a certain density in a forest, actually through the water channels, through the roots under the earth, they're actually communicating with each other. So if a tree, for example, a branch is broken and somehow it needs more water, it'll communicate the lack of water through the roots, and the other trees will pull in the water, from the earth actually, and it'll be sent to the tree that needs the water. it's actually pretty unbelievable. Well, this has been, publicized recently. Let's see if this bears the test of time, but certainly it's very fascinating. And of course, we also know that other, creatures, whether dolphins or birds or buffaloes or plants of any kind, are communicating all the time. And yet, the consciousness, the level of consciousness, or the freedom, let's put it this way, the freedom to deviate from the consciousness is in that sense, and the awareness of that freedom is in that sense unique to humanity, right? Because in that sense, every species, whether plant, animal, what have you, protozoa, virus, okay, every one of these species is somehow following its natural path and realizing its level of aql to the degree that it's been given. But they won't stray from their purpose in that sense. They won't stray because they haven't been given that capacity. They haven't been given, and that's what I would define as freedom. It's actually the freedom to deviate, okay? It's the freedom to stray from God's purpose, as it were. Because you can argue that every other particle in existence or every other manifestation of existence is absolutely channeling and focusing on its own manifest destiny without the freedom to diverge. But it's only the human being that has the freedom to diverge. In fact, even the angels, alayhum assalam ajma'in, even the angels do not have the freedom to diverge from God's will. Some say the jinn have a certain amount of freedom to deviate from God's will. Some say the jinn, even shaitan, a'udhu billah, has the freedom to deviate to a certain extent. In fact, that's exactly what he did. And he bore the consequence. As we bear our consequence when we deviate. That doesn't mean the consequence is not there. That's not what's being said. But it's our freedom to deviate from the natural order of the universe. And as such, we are the only species or actually manifestation to have that level of freedom. So in that sense, I think you can argue that there's a connection between being granted a certain capacity of intellect and a certain capacity of freedom that makes us as human beings who we are. And I'm very interested to hear your take on that.
Logan?
No, I would just agree. I think that seems I think that seems reasonable. Although I would say I just very briefly skimmed it so far, but there's a great book by forget her first name, but Talili is her last name. Okay. She wrote a book on animals in the Quran. Oh, wow. And it's great. It's very detailed and very in depth. But she talks about how every animal has its ummah, right? Every animal creature has its ummah, its community. But then also that each animal has its law, and that actually she might push back on that a little bit, saying that animals have their own laws as well, that and they also can deviate from them sometimes, in their own kind of animal way. Right. But I definitely agree. I mean, there seems to be, I've always understood, prior to reading that, I've always understood that as being basically the human condition, right? That we have to intentionally surrender to Allah. We actually have to intentionally be Muslims, in the literal sense of the Arabic word, being people who surrender to God. And we do that through the religion of Islam, and that's that's kind of what I've teach my students what Islam is. It's like we basically all the rest of the world is like moving along harmoniously, and we're the outlier who seems to like deviate and pollute and corrupt things, you know, and we have to engage intentionally so that we can be whole and become a part of the rest of the, I guess, spiritual ecology, right? You know, of the planet. So
wonderful. I love that term, spiritual ecology. I'm just looking up this book now from Sarah Talili.
That's right.
Animals in
Yes,
the
Sarah.
Quran, Cambridge Studies. Super interesting. I'll definitely post this one in the group then.
Yeah.
Cambridge Studies in Islamic Civilization is the publisher. So wow, very exciting, very interesting. Thank you for that reference. Definitely look at that. What do you think? Go ahead.
She has a lot of interesting work beyond that. I've just watched a few lectures of hers. You know, she also has interesting things on the soul and things like that. Right. So,
Muhammad, what do you say to that?
I mean, especially in reference to the class notes that you sent earlier. I mean, often when Muslims talk about freedom, we will often cite that particular verse, La ikraha fid din. But in relation to the points that we've discussed earlier, to me personally, freedom is actually embodied in the verse, Alam naja'al lahu aynayn, wa lisana wa shafatain, wa hadaynahun najdain. And we showed them two paths.
Yes.
So you have, it's not just about freedom, you have that capacity, the will.
Yes.
The will to decide what is the path that you like to take in this world. But of course, as you and I know, every decision, every path, every journey that we took has a consequence to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, that's my take.
Yes, sir. And in fact, the La ikraha fi din is a famous one. The one that you quoted is also, you know, very well known. And the other one, of course, is when you discuss with other brothers and sisters, whether they're Muslim or otherwise, you know, there's always lakum dinukum waliyad din, you know?
Yep.
So, okay, we disagree on a point, but it's not for me to tell you how to live your life. You go your way, I go my way. You know, and so that's a statement not only on the level of, okay, La ikraha fid din is more like, okay, nobody can force me in a way, yeah, or I cannot force others. Lakum dinukum is more, you know, in the direction of, okay, after we talked about everything, you're free to go in your way, I'm free to go in mine, yeah, and of course the will, having the capacity to have the will in order to take a path, whether we say that is the right or wrong path, if it's so clear, it's not always clear, yeah, what is the right and what is the wrong. But the tools of Quran and Sunnah and Islam are to help us to clarify as much as we can. So in that sense, قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ, right? And coming from the same verse and the verse that you mentioned, Brother Muhammad. So clearly there's an element of will. I might frame it that that will is useless without freedom. Okay, you can also say
for sure,
freedom is useless without will. Yeah. So it goes in both directions. Yeah. These are certainly interrelated elements, and God has blessed us with both of these elements. So an intellect to recognize the situation, a freedom to choose, and a will to drive us in either direction or in one direction of several. Yeah. All of these things have been granted to humankind to make our species the most special of the species, if you will. The reason that perhaps Allah has granted us the position of caretakers of the earth, of the khilafat, if you will, yeah, so on this planet. So to come back and circle back, I'm interested in this, what you mentioned, Logan, and we can get into the text that I wrote in a minute, but I'm interested in the the statement that you mentioned about Ms. Talili, that she mentioned that the animals are also following a shariat and they also have the freedom to deviate. Is that correct? Did I understand you correctly?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, and I might be misquoting her because I took it from a talk she was giving. Someone had asked her about, and so I was listening to one of her lectures online, and she mentioned that but that's basically what she mentioned, which I'm assuming she also must say in the book. Yeah.
Right. What Imam Razvi used to say about this, alayhi salam, when we used to talk about this, is he would say that every manifestation of Allah has some degree of aql. Even stationary manifestations like even rocks or particles, earth, water. Water actually has a lot of aql because water carries a lot of energetic memory. Yeah. So even, we wouldn't consider it alive in the sense of biologically, Charles Darwin would not say water is alive, but water has a capacity of memory. Yeah. A fascinating capacity of memory. And there have been a lot of studies done on the capacity of memory of water, actually.
Yeah, wow, that's fascinating. Yeah.
And that's why there are certain sources of water on the planet that if you drink them and you say blessings, you get certain energetic benefits. Yeah. So you can see even inanimate, objects can have a certain intellect. And if you ask the Hindus, if you ask the yogis, actually it's possible to transfer intellect onto inanimate objects and then utilize those, what are called yantras, okay? Using inanimate material and preparing it in a certain way with a certain intellect of the human, of course, and a certain teaching and tradition, and translating that intellect onto the inanimate object in order to open certain energetic channels. Do we believe it or not? It's not the point. Are we against or are we for? It's not the point. It's simply a question of whether such a thing can exist and whether such a thing can be done, because if it can, then it's science. Yeah. And it's not a question of belief, or at least not fundamentally. Then the question is, if I do it, then I can say I leave it because I don't like it or I don't believe in it. That's something else. But can it be done? Okay. And is the question. So even inanimate objects can have a certain capacity for intellect. And what Imam Razvi used to say is that the way that God created the heavens and the earth and the manifestation of the universe, he started with the inanimate and grew to the motionary inanimate, like the planets and the electrons and the energies and things that are moving, but very, very much in their own focused pathways. And then he gave a little bit more freedom to the single-celled organisms and a little bit more freedom and intellect to the plants and a little bit more freedom and intellect to the animal species. And finally, he summed it up with the human race. And what he also used to say is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant us the freedom and the intellect for a certain period of time. If he doesn't like what he sees, he's going to replace us with another species. He's going to do it better. So he's perfectly capable of doing so. Yeah, it's not that we say that the evolution is necessarily at its end. Yeah,
right.
In its final station. So and you can see it today. We see the biotech. We were just posting about it in the group. The biotech technological developments that are happening in the world. We see the digital developments that are happening in the world. And those certainly will lead to a further evolution of humanity. I think without doubt, if things keep going the way they are, unless Allah decides, okay, I'm going to stop this rubbish now. Yeah. But otherwise, this is the direction it's going. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so evolution is yet to come. And perhaps also further stages of freedom. So beyond that, maybe just jumping quickly into the text, the syllabus for today. I think we touched on a lot of it. So obviously, Islam is freedom in theory and practice, exercise always within the holistic boundaries of social responsibility, and of course also personal responsibility. to ourselves and to our loved ones and to the community at large. I did add the note, but I think it's perfectly obvious to all of us that this includes the preservation and protection of the freedom of research on religion, spirituality, and philosophy, as well as the various teachings within Islam in their many facets, traditions, and colors. There's not really any reason to add that in this group. I think we're all perfectly aware, but it's more just not to forget it, because sometimes it can be forgotten, as we know. So on the one hand, why would God give us this freedom, or why would he grant us this capacity? Well, it's based on the one hand on the responsibility of the people and the society, but on the other hand also in the trust of the positive transformative effects of Islam on the people. So you know, we benefit from this path, even if it's sometimes not so obvious. But you can try to deviate consciously. I don't know if any of you have ever made this mistake, yeah? To consciously deviate from Sharia. I hope you never make this mistake, okay? But it's certainly possible to do. And if you kind of keep your eyes open, yeah, if you keep your eyes peeled and you somewhat focus on the consequences, you'll receive them, yeah? You will absolutely receive them, and God will make you aware and give you the teaching even in this life, yeah? So we don't have to wait for Yawm al-Qiyamah to get the teaching if we have our eyes open, yeah? The teaching will come earlier, I promise, yeah? My promise to you. So, so the choice is not simply an academic choice or an imposed choice from Shariat or something like that. It's a very conscious, energetic decision, yeah, that comes with its own energetic level of conscious awareness, yeah. And let's see if we can get Yudhishthira in the room, because I think he's just joining in. Inshallah, let's see. UDZ. Yes, sir. Yudhishthira, are you with us? Can you hear us? We're just in the final minutes of the first part of this call. It may also be the last part of this call, because I think we're almost wrapping up for today, but let's see if we can get Yudhishthira online. Can you hear us, Yudhishthira? Just raise a hand or text if you prefer. Okay. I think we just continue with the hope that Yudhishthira can hear us. I'll just type him a quick message. Can you hear us? Okay. All right. So, yeah. So to get back to that, to what we were just in the midst of discussing, it's very much a question of consciousness to be able to take that positive energy that Islam is giving us and transfer it into our own motivations, our own actions in the day-to-day world. And again, here's the quote from Imam Razvi, and Logan, I think you hadn't seen it because I had neglected to forward you the syllabus on time. I apologize again for that. But again, the quote from Imam Razvi is that the primary difference between man and beast is just this, that man is free to exercise his conscience. Maybe I should have said fully exercise his conscience. And we just had the nice debate about, you know, what level of freedom do animals and plants and even inanimate objects have in this universe. So perfect. Okay, Yudhishthira can hear us. Good news. Thumbs up to you, sir. So, and of course, this freedom must never be used to exploit other people and living beings, nor to wreak havoc in society. Hence, by the Quran, man is urged to follow the straight path. We just had it. And in this respect, freedom in Islam is to be classified by the priority commandments of humaneness and reason that we've talked about in the last two classes. So that's why I put this one third, not first, not second, but third. Okay, I hope you agree with the order. I'm happy to discuss the order of these kind of principles, just as we're discussing the principles themselves. And again, this quote of the Quran, you know, this famous quote, La ikraha fi din kad tabayyana rushdu min al-ghaya, etc. Baqarah 256. You know, this is the famous one about freedom, but Muhammad had a quote just now, Brother Muhammad, just now from a quote that he knows in the Quran. And, you know, we talked about Lakum dinukum waliyad din. So clearly there are other points. And there's always the discussion about choosing the right path from the wrong path. It's all over the Quran. And even things like the process of tazkiyah, purifying yourself. You know, why would you need the process if you didn't have freedom and intellect to begin with? Yeah, there would be no necessity for the process. So that pretty much wraps it up for the syllabus, for today's syllabus. Okay, and we have another maybe 4 to 5 minutes if anybody wants to jump in on this. Maybe Yudhishthira wants to say a couple of words, having read the syllabus, or maybe the other gentlemen have a final comment before we talk about, before we close up and talk about next month's class. Go ahead, the floor is yours. Plural.
No, I don't have anything else to say, but I'm happy to listen to see what anyone else wants to say.
Okay.
I mean, I would think that today's session is pretty much straightforward, or probably to us it is straightforward, but to others may not be.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch it acoustically, Mohammed.
Yeah, I was saying that I mean today's syllabus is pretty much straightforward, but others may not be, because the concept of freedom itself seems to be pretty much debatable. Seems to be.
As I said, I mean, I think we all know it in this group. Yeah, we all have a very similar, let's say, homogenic viewpoint, more or less. Yeah, with some coloring on every side, but we also know what is happening in the greater ummah at large. Yeah, and in the diverse Islamic fabric of opinion and knowledge, there are, you know, very different opinions, opinions of fatalism, qabr, you know, opinions of a certain level of freedom, perhaps on paper, but then with the desire to control in practice. We see it in Saudi and in Iran and other countries in the world. So I think, yeah, definitely in this, you know, academic room, it's absolutely obvious. I think we are pretty clear on it. Freedom and responsibility, and the boundaries of intellect, and the boundary of freedom as well. So, but I agree with you, Mohammed. So glad to have it clarified so far. Maybe Yudhishthira, would you like to add anything before we go into a little summary for next month? Okay, Yudhishthira is a bit I can't hear you, so I hope you anyway can hear us. So to everyone, thank you all for joining. Yeah, next, let's see what we have in store for next month. Yeah, and I will give you a nice surprise on the principle when it comes for next month.
All right.
So I won't let it know now, but when I post the link, I'll keep you guys excited. So hope that you all have a wonderful month. And yeah, as an assignment, yeah, let me just take as an assignment. Let's do this as an assignment. As an assignment, we in this group had a pretty, let's say, homogeneous viewpoint on freedom. And I'd love to know from all of you whether you think that's a particularly Zaydi point of view, or whether you also see this similar degree of freedom, for example, in the Ahlul Sunnah or in the other schools of Ahlul Shia. And can we find this degree of freedom that we've been discussing in the other madhahib as well? Can we agree to take this as a little homework for next time, as a team exercise?
Yes, sure. That sounds good. Yeah.
Good. Sounds good.
Excellent. Okay, guys.
Good. Okay.
Okay, everyone. Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
Wonderful month for all of you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. Take care, everybody.
Waalaikumsalam
Good to see you.
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. All right,
Take care, everyone.
thanks. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Assalamu alaikum.